as opposed to Zoom, and what is it? What's the difference?
Good thing. First, let me say hello, everyone. Council table. you just entered into the council table. We're going to record this meeting. Jeff, your question about the meeting.com, I found it about, I guess, 5 or 6 months ago. I think it may have been, it's probably been around for a couple of years. It's US based versus China based, which is Zoom. Zoom is China based. And I just have this feeling that things are going to get rockier with China in the days ahead. Plus, China has been well known for gathering all our information from around the world, and not sure how they're going to use it, but they can just don't think it's good for them to have all our meetings and all that stuff. So, and this is a free platform at the moment. So you can get a paid program. It gives you a little bit more, but right now I can record for free. I can do everything that Zoom does on this. And I like the video and audio content seems to be clearer and better. So I like that. There's probably a few functionalities that I haven't discovered that may not work as well. Like, for example, I was just trying to put a PDF into the chat and I can't seem to get it to work, but we'll see. So you'll have to bear with me, but it's worth doing it. It's great for just, small meetings like this. I think it'd be really great. So we're going to take on 2 different topics today, both based out of transformational leadership. We've moved through a large section of what I would say personal leadership development, and we're moving towards the organizational or team building part of it. And this is right in that kind of middle ground where we're going to shift from one side to the other. So we're going to do 2 things. One is how to have an effective team meeting, and then the second part is how to handle, I call it difficult people or angry people, angry customers, stuff like that. And Ford's, I'm gonna let Ford talk a little bit about that one. he's got some great stories to talk about. Jeff Flug says, sorry, something came up and I need to drop off. Blessings. Probably got that. So we are welcome back, Jeff, if you come back. There he goes. So Jerry, you've probably been in a few of these meetings, so this is nothing new to you. And let me first start off with a meeting. When y'all think of meetings, what do you think makes an effective meeting? Did you just wave at me, Julia, or was that? You're muted, if Julia, if you're trying to talk.
Jerry was muted too.
Oh, okay.
I had my mic off.
Okay.
Sorry. Understanding people's situation or the situation that you're entering in, and once you can understand that, then you can understand how I need to answer or get involved with.
So understanding the people that you're entering into, or the environment, or both.
Yes. Whatever kind of meeting it is, Bill. It can be a one-on-one, it can be a group meeting, whatever. Okay. But understanding why I'm there, and
that's good.
I know we all know we've been given a gift by God. Once He gave us that gift, how do we use that? And it's not for everybody in every situation. It's for those places He puts you, that you can use and use your gifting and talents and skills and capabilities and what you've learned.
Mm-hmm. Julie, you had a thought?
Boundaries around the time makes an effective meeting. People need to know when they're going to leave. An effective meeting is when a leader does not let someone take over and talk and get off topic for long periods of time.
It's a good word.
Bring it back. Yeah. Having that skill.
Can you, I don't know if you saw the email I sent out today. I thought I like humor. So the first picture that you see is this person talking like they're just having a great time talking and everybody's falling asleep or looking at their phone.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. Jerry or Julia, tell me what you see, or meetings you've actually been a part of. Those probably you would say was the worst meeting you've ever been in. What caused that?
Well, I don't hold on to things like that, so I can't do that. However, in my Growth in God movement group, which we did by conference call this week, one facet is prayer, and to pray for specific needs for people in the group. It's just one small segment. And there were only 3 of us on the call. And so I put out a specific need and asked one person to pray. And instead, I got all of his thoughts on how this could be solved. And I'm like, it's a good thing we couldn't see each other, because I'm like, okay, Lord, can we move on here? He never really did pray. And then for some reason, his phone went off. And the other person, who was the leader for the night, I made a short comment, and she laughed. I think he likes hearing the sound of his own voice tonight. And she laughed. So when we got it back and he was done, then she did a wonderful declarative prayer over my situation, real short.
Amen.
So hearing what people are asking for and answering it, or not answering it, makes a bad meeting. Not answering questions makes a bad meeting.
And like you say, in part, what I heard from that story was the wisdom of the facilitator being able to make sure that if there is a question asked, that the answer is is connecting, and if not, how to interpret that or to rework that. In other words, the role of the facilitator is very important in the meeting.
Yeah, and I don't think she has a clue how to bring that around. But this was the conference call on telephone, so there was no visual.
Yeah.
And we know 58% is our body language, right?
Yeah. It's a good word. It's actually 55, but some of us is probably 58.
Well,
More when we're angry, it's probably more like 90.
That was the stat for the day. We did those stats on communication.
That's right.
That's all right.
Jerry, you got a thought? You're pondering.
You're on mute. You're on mute. We all had to learn where the microphone is on the new format.
There it is.
I probably should have said that up front.
Sorry, Julie. I agree with what you were saying. You have to understand what the situation is, and once you can understand what the situation is, people get off their own.
I have to take a very important phone call.
Okay.
Keep
Bill,
going,
and I'll
Jerry.
carry on.
That's right. And Pascal seems to want to jump in here, but he's
he comes and goes.
Yeah, he comes and goes. Yeah, so you're affirming Julia's thing about the lady.
Yeah, and understanding what the situation is, and then responding, because some people are on a different page, and you have to bring them on. No. Here's what clarification, and once you get it clarified, then Bill, what I really understand is where their pain is. If they're off in left field, they got pain there, and they really want to. That pain is overriding them hearing what I say, and where we're trying to go. And then a lot of times you have to deal with that before you can get on, like you. And I mean, you do a nice job facilitating, and because people have different situations and understand the question differently and that kind of stuff.
That's a great word. And very few people would express that, Jerry. Particularly in business, as you know, we're so trained to, be effective in our time frame as well as in the points discussed. And what I find is you've highlighted it as a negative is that if we get too far on the transactional side in a meeting, we cut out all that stuff and nobody responds, and it just becomes a meeting to hear what the agenda was, the conclusions of things, and very little discussion. And to me, that's not what a meeting is about. And that's what I like about Ford's thing. It balances the relational side back into the transactional part of the meeting. So agreeing with what you're saying. While Julia's out for a second, did any meetings come to mind for you that was not effective or not good, and that you would recommend us not?
Well, nothing. We go to a lot of different meetings, and the meetings, they can be a church meeting, they can be a church past church service. It can be Ruth and I do some 2-to-1 mentoring for pre-marriage couples. We've
Wow.
done that for a number of years, and there's a set agenda. So 8 weeks, you have each week has its specific agenda. They get the material to answer the questions, and then we've Zoomed for the last 2 years with these do about 4 or 5 a year, and anyway, they keeping them on focus and on track of what the meeting is about. Sometimes sometimes you have to listen to their problem situation they're having, and then you got to circle back around and bring them back around to okay, and somehow you try to make what their problem is appropriate to okay, well, we talked about this. Conflict resolution is one of our and communication in conflict. You bring that back to memory for them to how to resolve the conflict.
Amen.
That kind of stuff.
That's stunning. That's really good. That to me, and when done well, people don't even realize that's happening. But for you, you're the juggler that's able to take these different balls and keeping them sort of running in the right direction. That's awesome. It's really good.
Well, you know,
are you doing some of those on Zoom too? You say
the 2-to-1.
Yeah, where you're working with.
Yeah, we do.
Have you found that just as effective to do it that way versus in person, or is it more difficult?
Bill, you know, it does a couple of things for us. If they have children and they one has a child, they sometimes they want to bring them to face-to-face meetings, and then they've got to occupy that child.
Yeah.
Well, that takes away. Nothing wrong. But what we found also, the main thing is Zooming, is that we get heart issues dealt with, deeper heart issues dealt with, because they're more truthful, they're more succinct in their answers, and we get the truth of them dealing with themselves versus being, and a lot of times these couples come, you know, they live separately. It's unusual, but this day and time, but yes, they still are. There are couples that live separately, and then they come together for the Zoom meeting, and then, but the answers you get are real deep, sincere answers that belong to them, male or female, whatever, which is really good. We found that to be very enlightening.
That is interesting. I hadn't thought about in conflict resolution, you know, particularly for people that might feel vulnerable physically or emotionally, that if they're in a separate room from the other person, that they don't feel, maybe they feel safer, maybe is a better way to say it. That's awesome.
Yeah, they don't have the emotion attached to it that you have face to face, because they know they got to ride in the car with them when they leave, that kind of stuff. So it's worked out. Ruth and I really enjoyed doing it, and the couples seem to enjoy it, because if they're traveling, then they can be in a hotel room in North Carolina, and the other one in hotel room in Pensacola, and you know, you can still have your meeting and get them processed for their wedding coming up, you know.
Yeah, I think that's stunning. That's really great. I love hearing that you're doing that. Boy, do people need to hear the truth about weddings and marriage, and I really feel for that generation right now that they're in their 20s. It's a difficult place. Well, let me do this for the sake of our time. I'll move it a little bit. I'll just treat this that you and I are both kind of working from the same page from TL.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of teach for both of us, you know, just
okay,
for the sake of the video, in case Julia wants to watch this later. But, you know, from a TL standpoint, we had what we call the Waddle model. It's WADEL. And let's see if I can do the share screen. Where's that share screen button? Somewhere around here. There it is. We want to do a window. Yeah, see if this works. let's see. Is that?
I can see it.
Yeah. Is it?
Welcome, ask.
I think I'm sharing the wrong. I have another. That's. Let me. Where did? Okay, stop. Because. Oh, I see what happened. There. That's probably gonna be better. I have a different. There we go. This will be a bit clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from TL, and you're familiar with this one: the welcome, the ask, the discuss, and the empower, and the launch. And again, the reason I like this particular model, it builds into it, which is often left out, and that is the relational aspect of meetings. It's often seen as a transactional meeting. If you're coming with a good agenda, and agenda is great to have. The time frames are very important to have. All those are traditional, typical things people gravitate to eventually, if they've done meetings before. That they ought to have time constraints. People need to know what they're getting involved with in order to come to the meeting, virtually or in in a physical condition or physical meeting. But let me walk through the steps real quick. Some of the important points of this, you'll see elements of how you've probably run meetings, like Jerry was sharing a minute ago about working with conflict resolution or marital counseling and so forth. But you can do this in governmental meetings, business meetings, or whatever. These elements can be involved in all of them. Your time frames for each one of these points can be adjusted, particularly for like high intensity meetings where you've got to get in 20 minutes. You're not going to want to spend 10 minutes doing what we'll call the welcome. And that's where we'll talk a little bit more, maybe in another day, more discussion about this. But it's a very powerful way. I've used this at lunch meetings, and like Jerry said, just one-on-ones. You can do this effectively. And so let me just walk through what each one of these mean. And since we don't have a large crowd here today, I won't worry about the Q&A on it, but you can call me personally about it. The W, which is the welcome. Most people know this at the start. Usually the welcome is, hey, glad to have you on the meeting today, or welcome people in the moon. And it takes 15 seconds for the facilitator to do that. And they say, we're getting ready to start the meeting, and boom, they're off and going. So the welcome is pretty much non-existent. And I'm going to come back and address a few bullet points under each one of these. But we see a welcome where you want to engage the people more interactively, and I'll share a few points on that in a minute. The A is asking questions, what we want people to do there. Usually, if you do have an agenda, know that people are coming possibly with their own questions or needs on their mind, and they need the ability to express that. And Jerry just shared that in one of his things, that something comes up and they want to get that on the table, and you can adjust your meeting agenda through this A, or the asking questions. If you have time and the ability to do it, and you feel strong as a facilitator, you can incorporate that. What that A does is it tells the people in your team that you're interested in hearing what they have to say. And but you can address it sincerely by saying, it's a great question. We're going to have to put that in another meeting, or we'll try to address it in this meeting. But do respond to their to the ask there. D is discussion. That's where the meat of the meeting is, where you discuss your agenda and move around throughout the meeting on that. Again, letting people talk and have engagement. This is where the welcome part of it becomes very vital, because if people feel safe and secure and open and engaged with other people, you'll have a better discussion. And you can hear from Jerry's point that apparently he's done this well with his meetings, that people are, even in contentious situations, they're willing to talk about that in the comfort of his presence. The E is the empowerment. This is often done in meetings, but it's done sometimes maybe not as strategically. What we recommend is making, as it says here on the thing, clear roles and definitions of what's being delegated in the meeting or empowered in the meeting. So calling people out, saying, hey, and this is part of leading towards the close of the meeting, is to reiterate what you've accomplished in the meeting, and then assign the appropriate responsibilities to the people involved that needed to handle that. And you've got a clear way that when you have your next meeting, you can use this as your next point of engagement to say how those empowerments were handled. The launch is something that we see as very important, particularly for, I guess, creating momentum might be the best way to say it. A lot of people end a meeting or close a meeting, and if emotionally what people want to feel is that, hey, we're a team and we're being empowered to go out, just like I was on a football team, and if you've been on a team or certain environments where football's kind of good because you have a halftime and the coaches get together and we debrief on some things. But usually when they're launching us back out into the second half, you don't want to go, okay, let's just kind of go out there and do the same. There's usually some sort of statements or objective, and it just lifts people up and to go out and accomplish the mission. So we like to see you close a meeting, not with a close like, okay, let's just end in prayer. But we like to see something like that ties into the mission or the agenda to say to the people, here's what you can do in the future. In other words, put something out there that says, if you do a prayer, launch it out with a sense of saying, Lord, we thank you for hearing this meeting. And we ask that you go ahead of us to accomplish what we're doing. In other words, raise people's expectations up, not in a false way, but in a powerful way to do that. Sometimes we'll use videos to maybe make the point, but in a again, uplifting mode, because you want people to go out of the meeting feeling that they've not only heard the points in the meeting, they've been assigned the points in the meeting, but now they feel empowered from you. And if it's a Christian meeting, empowered by God to go out and accomplish it. So those are the 5 points that we think are essential in meeting that it follows in those sequences, the WADEL. And we feel like this is very important. And just to looking at my time frame on me, the welcome thing, let me caution you again, for those of you who are transactional, meaning you just want to get to the meeting and get things done, build some grace into your life here to let people talk. And particularly those who come to meetings that you typically don't hear talk, be sure to ask them questions that engage them. Ask them a personal question. Hey, how was your week? How's today going? Something intentional to try to draw them in, because that very person might be the person you need to have on your team commenting on some of the agenda items. And if you don't include that safety and closeness at the start of the meeting, you probably will miss some valuable information. Also on the relational side, if you let the waddle, the W go too far, you're going to lose people because they're going to get so frustrated wanting to get on to the next thing besides your meeting. They're going to want to move on and not be a part. And there's other dynamics that go into that, but I don't have time to really share. But that there is a caution around the W here. You can let it go in the wrong way, and particularly for salespeople, if you like this model. If you're going into a sales meeting, you want to use this, the front end to get to know people. If you do that from a false motive, I'll just assure you that you may win a sale, but you'll probably lose a customer eventually, because they'll see the falseness in your objective. And so I just encourage you to be careful about, asking personal questions and so forth, but not being authentic in it. It'll come back to bite you. So I would, for those of you who are just wanting to get the sale ahead of the relationship, that's a big caution. Welcome back, Julia. We just went through the Waddle meeting, and for the sake of time, I'm just going to close it out there. You can watch the video and catch back up if you need. So I would ask for questions at this point, but I'm going to move on to the next one, which is handling difficult people. Let me close out that particular thing and get me back here. Handling difficult people. I'm kind of curious if y'all, Jerry or Julia, have y'all ever had a difficult person that you had to deal with?
Oh, never.
Never. No, it's like, you know, I tell people, from a Christian perspective, I say we're born into a war. So I've learned over the years that, it's just inevitable. You're going to meet folks that just don't think like you, feel like you, want to be like you. As a matter of fact, they wish you didn't exist. But y'all, any stories come to mind? You don't have to share names, but just, the situation. It's okay if you don't.
Well, Julie, you want to go ahead? Okay, your mic is off.
That's right.
Julie, your mic is off. Okay.
I guess she's just staying off. Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
There.
There's,
you got it.
I'll listen to you.
Well, tell me the question again, Bill.
Have you ever had to deal with a difficult person? And, and usually anger is a part of it.
Yeah, sometimes it's not anger. Sometimes it's really passive aggressive behavior, and that comes more often in a business assignment, where I see. And then if you get to know the people and bring them in under the welcome, then I think I agree with what you just said in the waddle, is that once they become welcome, then they're free to issue objections or resist what you have to say. Because if you don't do it, what happens is, I found, is that they go around you to their superior,
that's a good word,
who hired me to come in there and do what I'm doing. And what that happens is he wants to pat his employee on the head and say, thank you very much. And then I become the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I like to keep my clients, then I've got to learn, I've learned to have to deal with all that, and then bring these problem presenters, bring them into underneath the umbrella. Mm-hmm. And if you can get them to know that it's not all about them, it's about the betterment of the business, and whatever their profit center is, or whatever their role of responsibility is, help them work through that and see that that's part of the whole. They're not just the whole. But anyway.
No, that's good. And it takes a lot. This is what I love about the Christian perspective in this, is that if we're authentic as Christians, we should have more of a pure heart, not being vindictive or,
right.
And so that can be read, I think, because of our body language. And so if we do we truly welcome those, even the people that are passive aggressive into the meeting, they'll probably at least feel it from our body language.
Yeah.
It's a good word. Julia, any thoughts?
Good word. I divorced a passive aggressive and got to see the full brunt of that during the 10-year process. Yeah. I'll reflect back on my gig group, which is the thing that's going on currently, that's called Growth in God. And Jerry, just so you know, this is a small group that's to be community, like in the book of Acts, and all the roles shift is like a circle. And they decided to shift the roles every 2 weeks. So we have a leader, someone brings a song, a psalm, a preach, a teach, communion, prophecy, prayer, outreach. And then the role of who's the leader that or does that shifts every 2 weeks. And much to my amazement, the hardest thing for me to teach people is to be the leader of the group. I thought that was a no-brainer, but that's the hardest, most difficult part. And because we've had a lot of weeks we haven't met off and on, and we cycle through, I am now going to come up, and for the next 2 weeks, I am the leader again, finally. And I've tried to stay in the background, but in the beginning, I kept having to say things and got a lot of resentment because people thought that they were going to decide how the group was going to go. And then one of the people said, look, this is what God told her to do. Listen and do what she says, because this is God's idea. It's not my idea. So now what I'm going to do, well, and the fella who didn't pray for me who decided to lecture me on Monday, he's been the biggest difficulty, and I've been asking Holy Spirit, what's behind this? He's a salesman for AT&T, so what's behind this? And I think he has a lot of insecurities, and I think they come out in his attitude and ways. And so I had somebody praying over the weekend last week with me about this, and 2 words or something struck me in his prayer. And I'm going to come in this time differently as the leader, and I am going to lift everybody up, because I'm a strong personality. I tend to come in and say, hey, this is what it's supposed to be. I'm going to be a lot softer, and I'm going to try to lift people up and hopefully lead by a better example. Apparently I wasn't the best example before. And I'm also going to do some teaching on this is what we need to do to keep the group moving. This is what each assignment is about. But a lot of times with difficult people, sometimes I just keep my mouth shut and let them vent, because there's no money involved. So there's no, which money often talks as to how our response is going to be with difficult people. So I'm learning kind of a different way to deal with difficult people. But for years, I never had a voice as a woman. And a lot of men don't either, but a lot of women don't have a voice. So I've learned to gain my voice, and I know who I am in Christ, so I'm more willing to speak out. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time that I'm the leader, and try to model a better example. And I will be ready to reel things in when they need to be reeled in for someone who's taking too long, because some of these people just love to hear the sound of their voice with no concept that we have a boundary over the evening, and that they're taking up way more than their segment, and they don't need to. I mean, the segments each have plenty of time. So I'm going to work harder on being gentle and being ready to step in with a gentle sentence, because I know how to do that. I just haven't had to do it in a while. And that's what I'm planning to do on my 2 weeks of being the leader.
That's your prayer request for you, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
I got you on that one. I mean, we'll pray for you. Yeah.
Bill, hello.
Did he freeze?
Maybe.
Bill, are you there, babe?
He must have frozen. So it's real easy to talk in theory about difficult people, but what we do, because a lot of times we don't know somebody's going to be difficult until something comes out of their mouth and they are suddenly difficult.
Yeah, you don't know that you've put them out on an island out here, and because you thought they're part of the mainland where everybody else is, but then they've drifted out on an island, and you got to reel them in from the island.
I like that. That's a great word. I like that. I like that imagery. Right. And and I expect the best out of people. And so I get burned sometimes because I'm not looking for the worst in people, and surprised when the worst pops out.
Yeah. Now, it takes a little bit of time too, especially in a group meeting, to know people. Mm-hmm. And then once you've gathered what their personality set is and what their belief systems, how they believe, then you're able to circle back around and draw them in using what you know of what their belief systems are, and then you can help them see where they're, because there's a major difference between a male and a female. I mean, guys need to understand that. Where Bill went.
Come back. He probably went off so he can come back.
Yeah. So anyway, once we all understand that, and I think that's where being involved. There you go, Bill. Welcome back.
Yes, we knew you had frozen up. Yeah.
Well, my power cord wasn't plugged in to my computer. So, or I have a laptop. So it was, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So keep going or
Yeah,
catch you up to where you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were just talking about the difference in the male and the female, and
dear.
which guys are us. We're hunters and gatherers, and we're domineering in certain areas. In other areas, we haven't got a clue. So it's and it takes a little bit of time. I think all men think we're immortal till we're 30, and then we realize, oh, we are a mortal being. Oh, it takes us about that long to figure out what's going on, and then we're behind the curve, and so we got to catch up and finding a good. We, like Bill and I was talking a while ago about, my wife and I do a lot of two to one mentoring, pre-marriage couples,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting to help the guy. If they're under 30, I know how to deal with them. If they're over 30, I deal with them a little differently because I know they've made the curve into mortality. And so it's just interesting to here's an example. You've had a great day male. You've had a great day at the office, and it's been a successful day, but you're worn out. You sit in the car and you want to go in, but if you go in, there's 3 children in there, and 2 or 3 of them, 2 of them in diapers, and the mother is, it's whatever. The mom has been with them, and she's been wrestling with that since you left in the morning. And not that she's got nurturing, caring about her. She knows how to handle that. But when she walks in, she's going to hand one of those to you. What are you going to deal with that? And just be aware that that's part of marriage, son. And when you walk in there, be prepared to accept your role as a family member, and you're not domineering at the office. This is your child that you fathered. You just help them understand, be prepared for that, because then when they walk in, they can be a lot more loving and kind to their wife. Here, let me take that child from you. I know you've had a tough day, and you do what your manly thing, what the Lord shows you to do with the child, and you know how to deal with that. If you don't, ask your wife; she'll tell you how to deal with it. You're not the conqueror of every situation, just
Right.
because you're male. But anyway, those are Jerry's off on left field there, but
It's so true.
Yeah.
Very good. Go ahead, Julia.
Nope. I don't have
All
anything to say.
All right, for the sake of time and this video, I'm going to present what we teach in TL, which is, this one has, you'll see it in its formula for handling upset people or difficult people. Customer service can really use this little formula very well, but I find it really good with anybody that's coming at you with, disagreements, challenging you on your opinions, or thinking you're wrong particularly. So we'll look at this, and I'll explain a little bit of how it goes through from a customer service standpoint, and then we can kind of widen it out a little bit for other circumstances. Let me share my screen. Oops. Window. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to play Ford's little clip on this. It takes about 15 minutes. He'll go through this, but then he has this about 10-minute version of when he graduated from Texas A&M, and his wife was, I think, 2 years. She's 2 years younger than Ford, and so as he bought, so he was working for a what do you call it, like a clothing store that's on the campus. They call it like the college
Bookstore.
Like the bookstore thing. So he bought that and had a lot of, the Texas A&M, logos and T-shirts and hats and all that stuff. And then he eventually bought that within like a year. The guy just didn't want to do it anymore. And then he bought another competitor across, and so by the time she graduates in 2 years, he's got like 2, maybe 3 of these stores that he's running. And then over the next 10 years, he buys more. And so that's kind of how Ford got it started in the business world. And he eventually took that to be the number one. He called Brazios. It was number one in that industry over about a 10 or 15 year period. And he took it public. anyway, that's Ford's background. So one of the stories that he shares is about an upset customer. It's really good. And it may share that at another time too, that it's really kind of fun to listen to, but very good. One of his primary points is in that thing is that the customer is not always right, but they are the customer, and the customer is not always number one. The employee is number one. And if you keep that in mind, at least from a business perspective, you'll win your employees and you'll gain the favor of your customers. And even when you have a misstep with a customer, he says you can make a customer for life if you handle that that correction correctly. And with, you know, and there was another story he shared about that. It was really powerful, and I'm sure y'all probably had those situations. And again, you can apply. I bridge these over into my family, into ministry, into other situations. So I try to make this a universal leadership training. So looking at this, let me just walk you through it real quick. I've had this happen where I'm the customer calling, say, Amazon, or latest one was one of the internet providers, and just, you know, they've messed up a couple of times, and I'm just really wanting them to get the action done, but they say, "Oh, we see that you're calling again. Oh, you know, whatever," and you just get the runaround. So if you've been on either side of this equation, here's what we say is that when you have, if you're in the customer service side and an angry customer or an upset customer comes at you, what we teach and train people to do is that you first remain silent, let them vent and go through it. And what we suggest they do is wait till they get to the place where they've just run out of words and they stop. And what we teach is that epinephrine that gets kicked off in the angry mode or the upset mode, it's not done yet. It's kind of running through a cycle. So there's still some of that in their brain. And so what you want to do is when they start up again, usually they'll get through. You pause for maybe 3 to 5 seconds. And if they start back up again, you just let them run again. And that's where we say remain silent again. And then what you want to do is you can use this 1, 2, and 3 where it says remain silent, remain silent. You keep doing that until you find that the length of their expression of anger or frustration or whatever it is shortens, and the intensity level comes down to where now they're talking in normal tone, and it says, you know, they'll basically say, "I just want some help," you know, something like that. And then you know, okay, then you can enter into step 4 here, which says, "Thank you for your feedback." Now, again, I've learned to do this with Ann and she's been better with me, because what will happen, she would come at me with something. My reaction would is that we're angry back. And now we crescendoed, and we both just agreed to disagree, and nothing gets resolved, and it's just painful. That usually happens if we let our emotion get in the way. If we're the client or the customer service person, if we can develop this as Christians, you know, I put myself in this mode many times, thinking through what if a person that comes to me and they're upset that I'm a Christian, and they perceive that I don't appreciate their view, say, of being a gay person or being having an abortion, or, you know, some particular thing that I might be at odds with them philosophically or politically or whatever, is to learn to be quiet and just listen, and then maybe ask a question. Is that all? You know, have you been able to share that? In other words, let them know that you're willing to hear. That's the open-minded thing. So being silent is helpful if you can develop that patience. That's to me the hardest part on my side that I find, is that it takes more resolve on me to say nothing and to just be quiet and listen. And I've had to deal with that I don't want people to reject me. So sometimes if somebody's coming at me, "You did this wrong," and I want to say, "No, I didn't. Really, you don't understand." And I push back, and then they just get, you know. And so the more I try to defend myself in that, I'm not being silent and listening. Now I will say there's places here that I would, in this, you know, because this particular model is often used in business, where there is some distance usually between the customer and the person handling this. But we've seen it on TV in recent years where somebody pulls out a gun, you know, and tries to harm somebody. So I just want to, you know, put a caveat here to say, If you have an angry customer that you sense is violent or whatever, you have to take a different tact here. And I'm not here to talk about that necessarily, other than to say, just be wise. I'm doing this, but in most cases, this will apply, that you remain silent, you listen to what they're doing. And if you get that epinephrine, whatever's causing that passive aggressiveness or that anger or that frustration, let them voice it out. Then you can say, thank you for your feedback. And what Ford would say, and I think he's very right in this, if you train your customer service, this helps us to improve. That's why a lot of people, you get on the phone and says, we're recording this for improvement of our thing. I would hope that most of the companies are doing it for that part. It is helpful too at this point, because if that other person, as we talked about earlier on in one of these sessions about how anger causes a problem in our own mental state, when you get that epinephrine going, it does shut down part of the brain. And so what Ford says, you can be not the smartest person in the room, but if you get everybody else angry, you just became the smartest person, because everybody else cannot think clearly. And so at this point, this is where, again, I come back to say, you've got to be able to control your own emotions when other people are upset and frustrated, whether or not you're the problem or not. And even if you're the problem, this is where I've learned to just be quiet, because sometimes where I perceived that I didn't do anything wrong, after listening to them, I go, okay, there is potential here that I may be a misstep. So that's where number 4 is great. Thank you for your feedback, and repeat back to them as clearly as you can, because if they're in an angry or frustrated mode, they may have gone all over the place trying to demonstrate their anger. But if you can nail it for them, it'll really help them feel that you did listen well and connected. Step 6 and 7, again, it's more oriented towards true customer service in a business. But what I would say to you here, if let's say the feedback, let's say my wife came to me about something, like she wasn't totally angry and frustrated, but it's a great example. She likes to know when she goes to bed, she's secure at night. And I used to feel like, hey, if anybody broke into my house, I'm going to take care of it, but I didn't. She wanted every door locked and everything. And so every now and then I would leave the door unlocked, and she'd wake up in the morning, see it unlocked, and say, Bill, you didn't lock last night. And I would say, oh yeah, I was going out that door and I came back in, I forgot, instead of just doing all that rhetoric of explaining, I learned to just say, you know what, you're right. I did. Thank you for your feedback. Here's number 6 is, I will follow up tonight and make sure that I don't do that. And taking that action on 7, I used to put a note there, hey, I locked the door last night, and that's okay if you want to do that. That's more for my sake to say, that, I've tried to do what you said. But that 6 and 7 thing is, if you do something that does make somebody angry, or that there is a complication there, or that you have some responsibility in this, even if you're not a part of the problem. If you say, you know what, I hear what you're saying, I think this person can help you with this, make sure you make that connection. In other words, just being responsible and being authentic in what you're doing. So handling upset people is primarily us, particularly as Christians, again, being able to handle whatever's coming at us with that sense of grace and with that sense of patience. Again, you have to be careful that if somebody's coming at you with anger, you don't even know them, they don't know what's going on, you meet them on the street, never seen them before, those kind of encounters, I would just encourage you that this model is not necessarily your model for that. So handling upset people or difficult people, there are other things that are coming into play there. So let me just keep this in more of a moderate on this example of handling upset people. It's when both sides of the equation here are listening, and you're not physically threatened or being taken advantage of. Does that make sense? And I'll stop there for any feedback, comments.
I like that model. I remember when Ford gave that, when I first heard that from him, and it really makes a lot of sense, and it takes the fire out of the how people want to respond to you, how they do respond to you. It takes them more in a human level where you can communicate with each other from that point. So It's good. I like that model.
Man.
Hey,
So the
Pascal.
Other comments, feedback?
Mike.
It's nice to be validated that I stay quiet. One of the things I'm trying to do when somebody else is venting is I'm trying to keep my peace. And that's been growth over the last years to do that. So I think that that helps me remain calm and hear from God as to what my response is going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think Pascal's trying to get that thing. It's we still can't hear you, Pascal. Sorry. And maybe there's that little button at the top. I don't know how it is on the phone. It may be hard to. Ah, there it is. Thank you.
What's going on?
That's good. Nope. Maybe no.
Otherwise,
That. Oh man.
We lost you. We had you. We lost you.
Keep trying. No.
like it cuts, it comes.
Oh,
Yep.
there it
Gotcha.
is. Oh, it comes and goes. It's kind of like when your finger goes across, it doesn't seem to work. No. Ah, that's so frustrating. No.
What's happening? I don't know.
Oh, there it is. It's kind of. Nope. Nope. Yeah, still not can't hear you. I don't. May have to reboot.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, that's good. Oh, you know what? Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is. Maybe if the signal's not strong enough, it cuts out the audio.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's been a lot. Yeah. Anyway, I just like, I really love what you said at the end. About how this model, of handling, upset people is not especially applicable, to all types of face to face with an upset person. I really love that aspect, how you really brought it home, at that level. Um, and also, like as you were sharing, I really felt like, man, this model, I mean, yes, it sounds great, it's amazing the way it's displayed, but I think it takes a lot of emotional maturity too. You know what I mean? Like, if I look at myself and I'm like, because when we hear you and we see, I mean, when I hear you and I see that model, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great, that sounds great. But it takes a lot, like practically, I can see some situations when you are with upset people and to remaining silent. I think it takes a lot of emotional maturity. It takes a lot of emotional wisdom too. I mean, because a lot of time when people are upset and they express it, when we are not yet, I believe, emotionally mature or secure, we automatically respond because we receive that as an attack toward ourselves, and so it's not always easy to handle. That's how I see it, but also what I do love about that model is because I think it really I think it's a great communication tool in the sense that, and I was having that thought lately with the Lord as well, and I was sharing that with some brothers of mine about hearing the message behind the message. Like sometimes like someone is getting upset, but what that person is saying behind what the person is saying, and in order to solve the problem, not staying at the surface level. um, and I was taking actually that example. I was with a brother of mine not long ago. We were actually talking on this about a situation, and I love the aspect that you took as well with your wife at some level. But the example like we were sharing was like, you can have a husband with a wife, and then the wife actually is upset because she doesn't have the attention she needs. And instead of, I mean, and it can be vice versa, or the husband, toward the wife, but like I'm taking the wife example, and she's upset because she doesn't have the attention that she gets upset against her husband, and she's like, it's always like that. You always come late, and then the husband is like, oh, but what's the matter? And where actually the message is, hey, I need you, like I just need you, I just need you home, I just need to spend some time with you. And that's how I see that this model is very, I think, like helpful, and I love about it is like I really feel in the way you displayed it, I really feel it helps us to really stay calm and trying to see what the person what's the real issue behind that what the person is saying behind what he or she is saying. So yeah, that's I think it's amazing. I love it.
That's a great, good word. And just Pascal, if you run into somebody, husband and wife, if they're angry, just hand them your phone and tell them to call Jerry.
Okay.
Jerry knows how to handle that.
There you
Okay.
go.
Okay. All right, Jerry. Okay.
Something I learned that might be appropriate here, at least like you're saying, Pascal, is very, I think, good observation on your part. I took this course called Life Skills, and Dr. Heckstrom said that anger, and again, anger, you can call it frustration. Anger comes out of different things, from pain and frustration. But he said that anger, just that, and it doesn't have to be physical anger, just you're turning red and clenching your fist. Anger can just be, bubbling up, and that's where the passive aggressive thing is, that people just get so angry. But here's the deal. Anger is a secondary emotion. And when Dr. Heckstrom said that, I thought, well, I kind of control my anger. I don't get really angry. But when I started realizing that just the inflection of my emotions and so forth, that I started digging behind the scenes, and I realized that some of the things that I was dealing with wasn't in the initial circumstance. That circumstance was triggering something way in the back. And for example, that what came to mind in that, where I was on the opposite end, I wasn't doing customer service in the sense I was, but I was a contractor, and I was working for a bone and marrow transplant group that I was remodeling their whole suite. And they had a surgical center and, patients in there, and all of them were highly, you can imagine, in bone and marrow, they're dealing with cancer and everything else. So it was a very high strung, intense environment that everything was on high protocol. And one night we were to make a transition of taking their electrical and plugging into what they had this big unit that was about half the size of a wall. It was a big, kind of like this cabinet I have behind me, but multiplied by 3. And it had an electrical plug that we had to take out and put in a new thing. And so the switch over, everything was electronically connected to it. The computers were connected to it. That's how they kept up with all the medicines coming into it. So it had to be on 24/7. So we couldn't miss a beat. Well, when they shipped that new case come in, we got the new case in, we put it in there, we'd put the plug that they designed for it in there, but the plug that they had shipped with the actual unit was not compatible. So now we had a problem, but the electrician had another plug that he could use that night, and it was like at midnight. But the problem is we couldn't get the breaker cut off for the building that went to that. We tried different things. The maintenance people couldn't figure it out. And so I had to make a decision. The electrician says, while the electricity is, quote, live. In other words, we didn't turn the breaker off. And I trusted my electrician. I said, go for it, because we need to get these people up and running. We don't, the lives are on the line. Well, the next morning, the CEO did not like my approach. And she absolutely, for about 10 minutes, just called me in her office and took me through saying that I put everybody at risk, her at risk, and blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to come across the table and say, honey, would you have been this way if I hadn't have done it, and your machines had all gone down and all your medicine have been lost? So But I think, like you're saying, Pascal, what was coming to mind and I never really thought about was, you know, she was more concerned not only just for herself probably, but just, you know, if somebody had died on her watch, if the electrician had been hurt and all that. And I just, you know, I just knew my electrician. So the risk value for me wasn't, but for her, you know, she was around death a lot of times. And so I think it was really concerning. And I bit my tongue until it was probably bleeding to not say anything. That was the first time I probably was that silent, because I really did. But I was very angry that she didn't appreciate the risk that I was taking to get her, you know, up and going. So it is a two-way street. And, but I think thinking about that situation years ago, that I didn't appreciate too, also the volume of headache that I could have caused her, and in her own compassion for my electrician and others. So thanks for sharing that idea. But that's where the anger as a secondary emotion is very important to keep in mind. And it's hard to do that. Like you said, Pascal, it does take years. You know, I'm old enough now, encountered enough of those to realize that people in their 20s and 30s, like Julia was saying, that it's they have to kind of grow. I think Jerry actually was saying that. Yeah, what'd you call it, Jerry? Once they get past 30, they
become mortal beings. They're immortal till they're 30.
Mortal beings. Before we close out, any other thoughts or comments handling upset, difficult situations?
Yeah,
Good job, Bill.
Maybe last. Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Pascal. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I said it's good job, Bill. Nice, nice
Thank you.
today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe a last one, as you're expanding on that. I have a thought, would be, you know, maybe the emphasis is not. That's how I feel like this when seeing this model, and as you're expanding and on this last thought. Maybe I would say how can I say that? Like, maybe the one very important thing might be to the emphasis on working on ourselves, you know, in order to be able simultaneously, you know, to apply this kind of model, you know. So yeah, I'm just seeing that aspect of, like, as you were saying, like, oh, so it takes a work on myself, you know, it takes a work on myself to be able to handle angry people. Maybe the best way for me to handle angry people is for me to deal with my anger. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so yeah. So that's kind of what what comes in my mind, like the aspect, the importance of being willing to go in those places, like you were saying, Bill. I think that that anger is actually a secondary emotion, and maybe behind it can be some pain, some fear,
Yes.
and I think it takes that intentionality of allowing God, and sometimes it can also mean therapy. It can mean different things to deal with our anger, to heal, the roots of those angers, whether it's fear, pain, whatever it is. So, I'm emotionally healthy, and then I can also, be able to handle, and apply that type of model and handle angry people as well.
That's a good word. And I'll close with this as kind of a launching it out into the future, what we all can be empowered to do using the Waddle model. What my sense spiritually is that it's already been a chaotic 3, 4, 5 years in the world, probably more if you want to just go back to 2008. But at least in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly with the pandemic, that fear has struck the world, and some of it was intentionally designed, and whatever you want to say, just the things were out of normal processing, and that creates fear when there's uncertainty. I see that it's hard to believe that it's going to be even more intensified as we go into this election cycle in the U.S. in a couple of months in November, and then beyond, because of the contentious nature of fighting over the soul of our nation. So what does that mean in this perspective of what we were just talking about, fear, anxiety, and frustration and pain? This is where it is imperative of us to, if we want to become magnificent leaders as Christians, is learning to say, do we really believe God is so for me that he is going to provide for me in every circumstance, that he has my back, is going to take care of everything that I need, that I can hear from him? And in other words, that assurance that God is the sovereign God that he says he is, because the world is trying to tell us there is no God. That it comes through many different channels that I think they may not be saying it with their mouth, but they're doing it in their action. They're saying, hey, nobody's going to put me in jail. Nobody's going to do this. Nobody's going to do that. And there's just a thing. So how do Christians move in the days ahead? We're going to have to deal with deceit. And this is part of the situation that I find a lot of Christians are in. It's easier to find in the word of grace. Well, that's their mean people, and we're just to turn the other cheek. And this is where we've got to be careful. The silence sounds like we're turning the other cheek, and that's good to a certain point. But if we have to address the truth, how do we do that in love? And that's where the key point, coming back to you, Pascal, is we have to get our love factor on by and it says perfect love casts out fear. So what I've been doing over the last few years, whenever I feel a little bit fearful or anxious or worried, it's bringing me right back into can I keep my focus on Jesus? And like what Jerry is saying, like with some of these people that he's working with, if we can bring that confidence back, that we can trust Jesus for everything, that's where the world is looking to us as leaders. And so the more that we feel anxious in a meeting, the more that we feel anxious with another person, is, Father, would you calm that spirit? Let me hear what you're saying about this situation, and bring him right into that moment. But it's really hard. But I feel like this is part of our training ground, like you were saying, Pascal, that we've got to manage our own self. And this is, to me, the key. And so walking away from this meeting again today, I'm just encouraging myself as well as you guys that whenever any of those kind of emotional components come up of anxiety, fear, frustration, whatever, dial it back and asking the God, how do you want me to handle this situation? Where are you in this situation? So that he is supreme and we don't let the enemy take advantage of us. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be my encouragement from an empowerment launch. Each one of you can do this. And it's not that I have that wisdom. I just feel like that's part of God's wisdom for us. But I think this is how we are going to win the world over the next few years, is that these magnificent leaders are going to start arising, where people will see us being able to take some of the hardest shots that they're going to shoot at us. And we just go, I hear your pain, but I can't go that direction, but I love you as a person, and we just keep walking and see what happens. So anyway, that's my encouragement on the launch part. Because of time, let's close this part out. Anybody that wants to hang on for prayer, we can do that. And Julia, can I get you to launch us out with a powerful prayer and empowering us to do this?
Lord, I thank you. I thank you ahead of time for all the repercussions that are coming from these conversations, all the wonderful things that you have planted in us that will grow, all the ways that you are going to use us to influence others in a positive, loving way, that we know all the time that you love us beyond anything that we have ever experienced in the world, and that we will never in this lifetime totally comprehend how much you love us, how you direct our lives, how you keep us safe, how you are with us when we are under attack. And Lord, thank you for these directives on how to deal with difficult people and how to keep our peace in the midst of chaos. Bless each one, and we go forth and we meet again in the future, hopefully in 2 weeks. In Jesus' loving name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.